Marcus Chun adjusted his collar for the third time, catching his reflection in the bathroom mirror of his downtown Seattle penthouse. The Armani suit hanging behind him remained untouched while he smoothed the wrinkles from his simple button-down shirt and dark jeans. His daughter Lily knocked softly on the doorframe. "Dad, you look nervous," she said, her 80-year-old eyes filled with concern. "Are you sure about this date thing?" Marcus knelt to her level, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. "It's just dinner, sweetheart. Mrs. Patterson from next door will be here in 20 minutes. But you never go on dates," Lily observed with the brutal honesty only children possess. "You always say work is too important." The truth stung because she was right. 3 years since the divorce, Marcus had thrown himself into building his tech company, using late nights and weekend conferences as shields against the loneliness that crept in after Lily went to bed. His assistant had finally worn him down with her persistent matchmaking efforts, promising this woman was different, genuine, not interested in his money. "Maybe it's time I tried something new," he told Lily, though the words felt foreign on his tongue. In the elevator descending 42 floors, Marcus checked his phone one final time. The restaurant wasn't one of his usual haunts. No valet parking or wine lists with bottles costing more than most people's monthly rent. Cafe Luna sat tucked between a laundromat and a used bookstore in Capitol Hill, the kind of neighborhood he drove through but never stopped in. His Tesla remained in the garage tonight, replaced by the Honda Civic he kept for incognito visits to his company's lower-level offices. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was essentially going undercover for a date, but experience had taught him that revealing his wealth too early attracted the wrong kind of attention. Women who saw dollar signs instead of a single father struggling to balance boardroom decisions with bedtime stories. The cafe's exterior was nothing like the establishments he frequented for business dinners. No doorman, no hostess station, just a simple glass door with hand-painted hours and a crooked open sign. Through the window, he glimpsed mismatched furniture and string lights, creating an atmosphere that money couldn't buy, the kind of authentic warmth his designer penthouse lacked despite its 7-figure price tag. Marcus paused on the sidewalk, second-guessing everything from his choice of venue to his choice of shirt. His last 3 dates had been disasters, women who spent the evening asking about his car, his house, his investment portfolio. One had actually taken a photo of his credit card when he wasn't looking, claiming she needed to verify his identity for her friends. Tonight would be different, he told himself, pushing open the cafe door. The bell above chimed softly, and the aroma of fresh coffee and homemade pastries enveloped him like a hug. Conversations flowed around small tables where people seemed genuinely engaged with each other rather than their phones. A guitarist in the corner played something melodic and unfamiliar, his guitar case open for tips that were mostly singles and coins. Marcus scanned the room, looking for a woman matching his assistant's description. Medium height, long dark hair, warm smile. At least half the women in the cafe fit that description, and he realized how little planning had gone into this arrangement. No phone numbers exchanged, no specific meeting protocols, just a time and place and hope. A young woman behind the counter caught his attention, not because she matched any description, but because of the way she moved. Graceful despite the obvious rush, she balanced 3 plates on one arm while refilling water glasses with the other, her smile never wavering even when a customer complained about his order taking too long. Her name tag read Elena, and something about the way she handled the difficult customer with patient kindness made Marcus forget why he was there. She glanced toward him, and their eyes met across the crowded cafe. Her smile brightened, and she held up one finger, indicating she'd be with him in a moment. Marcus found himself hoping his date wouldn't show up, that he could spend the evening talking to this woman who seemed to bring light to everyone around her. Maybe this night would surprise him after all. Elena wiped her hands on her apron and approached Marcus with the kind of genuine warmth that came from years of service industry work. Her dark eyes sparkled with a mix of nervousness and excitement that immediately put him at ease. "You must be Marcus," she said, extending a slightly damp hand from washing dishes. "I'm Elena. I'm so sorry about the chaos tonight. We're short-staffed, and I wasn't sure if you'd actually show up. Marcus shook her hand, confused by her assumption, but oddly pleased by it. The calluses on her palms told stories of hard work that his soft executive hands had never known. "You my date?" he asked, though something in his chest hoped the answer was yes. Elena's cheeks flushed pink. "Unless there's another Marcus meeting someone at 8:30. She laughed, a sound that reminded him of wind chimes on a summer evening. "I have to finish this last table, but then my shift ends. Would you mind waiting just a few more minutes?" Before Marcus could respond, she was already moving toward a corner table where an elderly couple sat over empty coffee cups. He watched her refill their drinks, ask about their grandchildren, and genuinely listen to their answers. The woman patted Elena's hand affectionately, and Marcus heard fragments of conversation about night school and saving money for textbooks. When Elena returned, she had shed her apron and let her hair down from its practical ponytail. The transformation wasn't dramatic, but something about seeing her outside her work role made Marcus's pulse quicken. She wore simple jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out the warmth in her brown eyes. "I'm really sorry about this," Elena said, gesturing around the cafe. "I know it's not exactly what you probably expected for a first date. I would have suggested somewhere nicer, but between work and classes, this is honestly the only place I know well enough to feel comfortable." Marcus found her apology endearing and unnecessary. "It's perfect," he said, meaning it more than he had expected. "I spend too much time in stuffy restaurants anyway. This feels real." Elena's smile could have powered the string lights overhead. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Most guys run when they find out I'm just a waitress going to community college part-time." They found a small table by the window as the last customers filtered out. Elena waved goodbye to each regular customer by name, asking about jobs and family members and promising to save their favorite pastries for tomorrow. Marcus had never seen such genuine connection between service staff and customers. In his world, servers were invisible, efficient ghosts who appeared and disappeared without acknowledgement. "So tell me about yourself," Elena said, settling into her chair with her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. "What do you do when you're not meeting mysterious women in coffee shops?" Marcus hesitated, the lie forming on his lips before he could stop it. "I work in tech," he said, which wasn't entirely false. "Mostly computer stuff, nothing too exciting. What about you? Besides this place, I mean." Elena's eyes lit up with passion that transformed her entire face. "I'm studying social work at Seattle Central. I want to open a community center someday, somewhere kids can come after school for help with homework, art programs, maybe learn some job skills. There's this empty building 3 blocks from my apartment that would be perfect, but the rent is way out of my league right now." She spoke with the kind of vision that Marcus recognized from his early entrepreneurial days, before profit margins and board meetings had replaced the simple desire to build something meaningful. Her dream was smaller in scope than his empire, but infinitely larger in heart. "That sounds incredible," Marcus said. "How did you get interested in social work?" Elena's expression grew thoughtful. "I grew up in foster care, bounce around a lot. There was this one social worker, Mrs. Rodriguez, who really saw me. Not just another case file, but a person with potential. She helped me get into community college, taught me that where you come from doesn't have to determine where you're going." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a recognition of purpose he had lost somewhere between his first million and his 10th. When was the last time he had talked about helping people rather than maximizing shareholder value? "What about you?" Elena asked. "What got you into computers?" "I like solving problems," Marcus said, which was true even if it was only part of the story. "Finding elegant solutions to complicated challenges. Though lately, I feel like I've lost sight of why that mattered in the first place." Elena leaned forward, her elbows on the small table. "That happens to everyone, I think. We get so caught up in the day-to-day stuff that we forget the bigger picture. But the fact that you recognize it means you haven't lost it completely." Her insight was surprisingly profound, and Marcus found himself sharing thoughts he hadn't voiced to anyone, including his therapist. They talked about purpose and meaning, about the difference between success and fulfillment, about the challenge of raising children to have values in a world that often rewarded their absence. The cafe owner, A heavy-set man with kind eyes approached their table. Elena, Mija, I'm locking up now. You two are welcome to stay and talk, but I need to get these lights off. Elena jumped up, immediately apologetic. Of course, Mr. Torres. Thank you for letting us stay so long. Outside, the Seattle evening was crisp and clear, the kind of night that made the city feel full of possibility. Elena pulled her sweater tighter and looked at Marcus with shy uncertainty. Would you like to walk for a bit? She asked. There's a little park nearby, and the night's too beautiful to waste. The small park Elena led him to was nothing like the manicured spaces Marcus knew from his upscale neighborhood. Here, playground equipment showed signs of loving wear, and the basketball court's nets were frayed but functional. Street lamps cast pools of warm light on worn paths, where couples walked hand in hand and teenagers practiced skateboard tricks. This is my favorite spot in the whole city, Elena said, settling onto a bench that faced a small pond where ducks glided silently across the dark water. I come here every morning before my first class, just to think and plan my day. Marcus sat beside her, close enough to catch the faint scent of vanilla from her hair. The bench had clearly seen better days, its green paint chipped and weathered, but something about the imperfection made it more inviting than any of his expensive furniture. What do you think about? Marcus asked, genuinely curious about this woman's inner world. Elena smiled, her eyes following a family of ducks as they disappeared into the reeds. Everything, really. The kids I want to help, the center I dream about building, whether I'm strong enough to actually make it happen. Sometimes I imagine what it would look like filled with children who have somewhere safe to go after school. Her voice carried a weight that spoke of personal experience, and Marcus found himself leaning closer, drawn by her vulnerability. There's this little boy, Roberto, who lives in my building, Elena continued. He's 7, and his mom works 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. After school, he sits in the hallway doing homework because their apartment is too small and chaotic. He's so smart, Marcus. Last week, he showed me this story he wrote about becoming an astronaut, and the spelling was perfect, but he had no one to share it with. Marcus felt something twist in his chest as he thought about his own daughter, safe in their penthouse with every educational advantage money could buy. The contrast between Roberto's reality and Lily's privilege was stark and uncomfortable. What happened to the story? Marcus asked. Elena's smile brightened. I laminated it and hung it in the cafe. Mr. Torres lets me put up artwork from neighborhood kids. Roberto comes in every day after school just to see his story on the wall. It's not much, but it makes him feel important. The simple gesture revealed more about Elena's character than any expensive gift ever could. She understood that recognition and validation were often more valuable than material things, something Marcus had forgotten in his world of corporate achievements and financial rewards. You're already making a difference, Marcus said softly. Maybe not the way you planned, but you're changing lives. Elena shook her head. It's not enough. There are dozens of kids like Roberto in my neighborhood alone. Bright, curious children who could accomplish anything with the right support and encouragement. Instead, they're falling through cracks because the system is overwhelmed and underfunded. Her passion was infectious, and Marcus found himself imagining solutions with the kind of strategic thinking he usually reserved for business challenges. What would it take to make your community center happen? Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. About $50,000 for the first year's rent and basic renovations, plus funding for programs and supplies. Might as well be $50 million for someone like me. The number was laughably small by Marcus's standards. He spent more than that on wine for a single corporate event. The realization that Elena's entire dream could be funded by what he considered pocket change made him feel simultaneously powerful and ashamed. Money isn't everything, Marcus said carefully, testing the waters. Sometimes the most valuable things can't be bought. Elena turned to face him fully, her expression serious. That's easy to say when you have enough to pay rent and buy groceries without checking your bank balance first. Don't get me wrong, I know money can't buy happiness, but it can buy security, opportunity, the chance to focus on helping others instead of just surviving. Her honesty was refreshing after years of people telling him what they thought he wanted to hear. Elena spoke truth without apology, even when it might be uncomfortable for him to hear. "You're right," Marcus admitted. "I didn't mean to minimize your struggles. I just meant that your heart, your dedication to those kids, that's the part that can't be purchased." Elena's expression softened. "Thank you for saying that. Most people think I'm naive for believing I can actually make a difference. My ex-boyfriend used to call my dreams unrealistic, said I needed to focus on more practical goals like getting a better-paying job." The mention of an ex-boyfriend stirred something protective in Marcus's chest. "He sounds like an idiot," Marcus said, surprising himself with the vehemence in his voice. Elena laughed, the sound lighter this time. "He wasn't wrong about the practical stuff. I work 40 hours a week at the cafe, take 3 classes, and still barely make ends meet. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being foolish, chasing something that might never happen." The vulnerability in her admission made Marcus want to solve all her problems immediately. He could write a check tonight that would fund her community center for years, but something held him back. Elena valued authenticity above all else, and revealing his wealth now would change everything between them. Instead, he reached out and gently took her hand. "Sometimes the most important things are worth the struggle," he said. "Those kids you want to help, they need someone who understands what it means to fight for something better." Elena's fingers intertwined with his, and Marcus felt a connection deeper than anything he had experienced in years. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the last of the evening joggers circle the pond while the city lights began to twinkle in the distance. "I should probably get home," Elena said reluctantly. "I have an early class tomorrow, and then a double shift at the cafe." Marcus walked her to the bus stop, wanting to offer her a ride, but knowing his car would raise questions he wasn't ready to answer. As they waited for the number 12 bus, Elena turned to him with shy uncertainty. "I had a really wonderful time tonight," she said. "Would you maybe want to do this again sometime?" Marcus felt something in his chest expand with warmth and possibility. "I can't think of anything I'd rather do," he said, meaning every word. 3 days later, Marcus found himself walking through Elena's neighborhood in the late afternoon, ostensibly to grab coffee at Cafe Luna, but really hoping to catch another glimpse of the woman who had occupied his thoughts since their first date. The streets here told stories his corporate world never acknowledged. Children played hopscotch on cracked sidewalks while grandmothers watched from apartment stoops, calling out warnings in Spanish and English. He spotted Elena before she saw him, crouched beside a fire hydrant where a small boy sat with homework spread across his lap. This had to be Roberto, the aspiring astronaut she had mentioned. Elena held a worn dictionary, helping him sound out words while other children played nearby. "See, Roberto," Elena was saying, "astronomy comes from Greek words meaning star and law. People who study the stars are learning the laws of the universe." Roberto's eyes widened with wonder. "Like detectives, but for space?" "Exactly like detectives," Elena confirmed, ruffling his dark hair. "You're already thinking like a scientist." Marcus approached slowly, not wanting to interrupt the tutoring session. When Elena noticed him, her face lit up with the same genuine warmth that had captivated him at the cafe. "Marcus," she exclaimed, standing and brushing dust from her jeans. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "I was hoping to buy you coffee," Marcus said, then looked down at Roberto. "But it looks like you're busy with something much more important." Roberto studied Marcus with the suspicious intensity that 7-year-olds reserve for unknown adults. "Are you Elena's boyfriend?" he asked with characteristic directness. Elena's cheeks flushed pink. "Roberto, this is my friend Marcus." "Marcus, this is Roberto, the writer I told you about." Marcus knelt to Roberto's level, treating the introduction with the same seriousness he would afford a potential business partner. "Elena showed me your astronaut story. She said it was incredible." Roberto's suspicious expression melted into pride. "I'm going to be the first person to walk on Mars. Elena says if I work hard in school, I can do anything." "That's absolutely right," Marcus said, meaning it completely. "What's your favorite planet?" For the next 10 minutes, Roberto regaled Marcus with detailed knowledge about planetary compositions, orbital periods, and the challenges of space travel. His enthusiasm was infectious, and Marcus found himself genuinely engaged in a conversation about rocket fuel efficiency with someone not yet tall enough to ride most amusement park attractions. Roberto knows more about space than most adults, Elena said proudly. He reads everything he can get his hands on at the library. The library's computers are slow, though, Roberto added matter-of-factly. And sometimes they're all being used, so I have to wait a really long time to do research. Marcus filed this information away, already imagining solutions. What kind of research do you do? I'm writing a report about whether there could be life on Europa, Roberto explained seriously. That's one of Jupiter's moons. It has an ocean under the ice, and Elena says where there's water, there might be life. Elena's approach to nurturing Roberto's curiosity impressed Marcus more than any MBA program he had encountered. She wasn't just helping with homework. She was fostering a genuine love of learning that could shape the boy's entire future. Roberto, your abuela is calling. Elena pointed toward an apartment window where an elderly woman was waving. Better go wash up for dinner. After Roberto gathered his papers and ran toward the building, Elena and Marcus walked slowly down the street. Every few steps, Elena stopped to greet neighbors, ask about job searches, or admire someone's small garden. She knew everyone's names, their struggles, their small victories. You're like the unofficial mayor of this neighborhood, Marcus observed. Elena loves it. More like the unofficial social worker. People here look out for each other because we have to. When Mrs. Gonzalez needs groceries but can't walk to the store, her neighbors help. When the Johnsons' heat got turned off last winter, everyone pitched in for the reconnection fee. The sense of community was unlike anything Marcus had experienced in his affluent circles, where neighbors were strangers separated by manicured lawns and privacy gates. Here, interdependence created bonds that money couldn't buy. They passed the empty building Elena had mentioned, a two-story brick structure with soaked windows and a for-lease sign that looked weathered by months of neglect. Elena stopped and pressed her face against the glass, peering inside like a child at a toy store window. I could see it all so clearly, she said softly. Art tables by those big windows, computers along that back wall, maybe a small kitchen where kids could learn cooking skills. There's enough space for tutoring areas, game tables, even a quiet reading corner. Marcus studied the building with his developer's eye, automatically calculating renovation costs, permit requirements, and timeline estimates. The space was perfect for Elena's vision, with good bones and excellent natural light. In his world, this would be a simple acquisition, a minor line item in a quarterly budget. How long has it been empty? Marcus asked. About 8 months, Elena replied. The rent's too high for most businesses that would serve this neighborhood, but too low for the gentrification crowd that's moving in closer to downtown. It's like it's waiting for someone who actually cares about this community. Elena's phone buzzed with a text message, and her expression shifted to concern as she read it. I'm sorry, Marcus. My study group moved our meeting up an hour. I have a test tomorrow in developmental psychology. Of course, go, Marcus said immediately. Good luck with your test. Elena hesitated, then stood on her tiptoes to kiss his cheek. The brief contact sent warmth spreading through his chest. Thank you for being so understanding, and for being so sweet with Roberto. Not everyone would take a 7-year-old space dream seriously. As she hurried toward the bus stop, Marcus remained standing in front of the empty building, imagining it filled with children like Roberto, whose potential was limited only by opportunity and resources. For the first time in years, he felt a pull towards something greater than profit margins and stock prices. He pulled out his phone and dialed his assistant. Jennifer, I need you to research a commercial property for me. Yes, I know it's after hours. This is important. The next evening, Marcus arrived at Elena's apartment building carrying a toolbox he had borrowed from his building's maintenance department. The lobby smelled of cleaning products and decades of cooking aromas that had seeped into the walls. A handwritten sign taped to the mailboxes warned residents about a broken elevator, and Marcus climbed 3 flights of narrow stairs to reach Elena's floor. He knocked on apartment 3B, and when Elena opened the door, her surprised expression quickly melted into delight. Marcus, what are you doing here? And why do you have tools? You mentioned the other night that your kitchen faucet keeps dripping, he said, hefting the toolbox. I thought maybe I could take a look at it. Elena's eyes widened. You know how to fix faucets? Marcus grinned. I'm full of surprises. Plus, I figured it was the least I could do for someone who's teaching future astronauts about Europa. Elena stepped aside to let him in, and Marcus got his first glimpse of her world. The apartment was tiny, maybe 400 square feet total, but every inch was utilized with the efficiency of someone who understood the value of space. Books lined makeshift shelves constructed from boards and cinder blocks, and a small table by the window served as both dining area and study desk. Despite its size, the apartment radiated warmth through carefully chosen details. Colorful throw pillows, plants thriving on the fire escape, and children's artwork taped to the refrigerator. This is Roberto's gallery, Elena explained, noticing Marcus's attention to the drawings. He brings me a new masterpiece every week. That one's his vision of the Mars colony he's going to build. Marcus studied the crayon drawing with genuine interest. The 7-year-old had included remarkable details: solar panels, greenhouses, even what looked like a communications array. The kid's going to be an engineer, Marcus said with certainty. Elena beamed with pride. He has the mind for it. Now about that faucet. I have to warn you, it's been acting up for months. My landlord keeps promising to fix it, but I think he's hoping I'll just move out so he can raise the rent for the next tenant. Marcus followed her to the kitchen, a galley space barely wide enough for 2 people. The dripping faucet had stained the sink with mineral deposits, and he could see that the problem was likely a worn washer, a $5 fix that had been ignored until it became a daily annoyance. As he worked, Elena bustled around the small space, preparing dinner despite his protest that she didn't need to feed him. The kitchen filled with the aroma of garlic and cumin, and Marcus found himself more relaxed than he had been in months. There was something deeply satisfying about working with his hands again, solving a simple, concrete problem instead of navigating corporate politics and market projections. When did you learn to do plumbing? Elena asked, stirring something that smelled incredible on the stove. My dad was a contractor, Marcus said, which was true even if it left out several decades of financial success. He believed everyone should know how to fix things. Said it builds character and saves money. Elena laughed. Sounds like a wise man. My foster dad taught me basic car maintenance for the same reasons. Changed my oil for the first time when I was 14. The casual mention of her foster care background reminded Marcus of how different their childhoods had been. While he had been learning power tools in his father's workshop, Elena had been navigating a system that moved children from home to home, never quite providing the stability that came naturally in traditional families. There, Marcus announced, turning the faucet handle. The dripping had stopped completely. Should be good as new. Elena clapped her hands together like a child on Christmas morning. You're amazing. I've been listening to that drip for so long, I almost forgot what silence sounded like. Her genuine excitement over such a simple fix touched something deep in Marcus's chest. When was the last time anyone had been so appreciative of his efforts? In his corporate world, success was expected, acknowledged with brief nods before moving on to the next challenge. Now, Elena said firmly, definitely staying for dinner. I made way too much, and it's the least I can do for my personal maintenance hero. They ate at her small table, plates of chicken enchiladas that rivaled anything Marcus had tasted at Seattle's finest restaurants. Elena had learned to cook from various foster mothers, she explained, picking up techniques and recipes that created a unique fusion of flavors and cultural influences. This is incredible, Marcus said, meaning it completely. Where did you learn to make mole sauce like this? Elena's cheeks flushed with pleasure. My third foster mom, Mrs. Herrera. She said cooking was love made visible, and that everyone deserves to feel loved through food. I think it was the first time anyone had ever cooked specifically for me, you know? Not just putting another plate on the table, but actually considering what I might like. The simple statement revealed volumes about Elena's childhood, and Marcus felt a familiar protective instinct rising in his chest. He wanted to shield her from every hurt she had experienced, to somehow retroactively provide the stability and unconditional love she had been denied. After dinner, they sat on her small couch, sharing a bottle of wine that Elena apologized for, explaining it was the cheap kind from the corner market. Marcus found it perfectly acceptable, enhanced by the company and the intimate setting. Through her window, they could see into other apartments where families gathered around television sets and kitchen tables, their lives visible in warm rectangles of light. "I love this view," Elena said softly. "It reminds me that everyone has their own story, their own struggles and celebrations happening behind those windows. Makes me feel less alone." Marcus understood exactly what she meant. His penthouse view showed the city from above, distant and impersonal. Elena's window offered connection, a reminder that life was happening all around them in small, important moments. "Elena," he said carefully, testing the waters for a deeper conversation, "what happened with your ex-boyfriend? The one who didn't support your dreams?" Elena sighed, curling her legs underneath her. "Derek was practical to a fault. He couldn't understand why I would spend my free time tutoring kids for free instead of picking up extra shifts at the restaurant where he worked. Said I was wasting time on fantasies instead of building a real future." "What kind of real future?" Marcus asked. "Getting married, having kids, buying a house in the suburbs, focusing on our own family instead of other people's children. He wasn't wrong about it being more traditional, but it felt like giving up on the part of myself that actually mattered." Marcus felt a surge of anger toward this Derek person, followed immediately by gratitude that his narrow vision had freed Elena to find someone who appreciated her extraordinary heart. Saturday morning found Marcus standing outside the Westside Community Food Bank, wearing his oldest jeans and a faded college sweatshirt. Elena had mentioned volunteering here every weekend, and when he asked if he could join her, her face had lit up with the kind of joy that made his chest tight with affection. Elena emerged from the building's side entrance, tying an apron around her waist and pulling her hair back into a practical ponytail. When she spotted Marcus, she waved enthusiastically and jogged over to meet him. "I can't believe you actually came," she said, slightly breathless. "Most people think volunteering sounds nice in theory, but find excuses when it comes to actually showing up." Marcus fell into step beside her as they walked toward the main entrance. "I meant it when I said I wanted to understand what matters to you. Besides, it's been too long since I've done something that actually helps people." Elena squeezed his arm affectionately. "You're going to love this." "Well, love might be the wrong word. It's heartbreaking and inspiring and exhausting all at the same time." Inside, the food bank bustled with organized chaos. Volunteers sorted donations, stocked shelves, and prepared bags of groceries for families waiting in a line that stretched around the building. Marcus had driven past similar lines countless times without really seeing them, but being inside the operation revealed the enormous scope of need in his city. "Elena, there you are," called a woman with silver hair and paint-stained fingers. "We've got 3 new volunteers today, and I was hoping you could show them the ropes." "Of course, Mrs. Patterson," Elena replied. "This is Marcus. He's eager to help however he can." Mrs. Patterson studied Marcus with the assessing gaze of someone who had learned to read people quickly. "You look strong enough for the loading dock. We've got a truck full of donations from the grocery chain that needs unloading." For the next 2 hours, Marcus lifted boxes, sorted canned goods, and organized produced donations alongside volunteers who ranged from teenagers fulfilling community service requirements to retirees who had been coming every weekend for years. His expensive personal trainer had never provided a workout this satisfying. During their break, Elena introduced him to families who had become regulars at the food bank. There was Maria, a single mother of 3 who worked 2 part-time jobs but still couldn't stretch her paycheck to cover both rent and groceries. James, a veteran struggling with medical bills after his disability benefits were reduced. The Chun family, recent immigrants who spoke limited English but whose gratitude needed no translation. Each story chipped away at Marcus's assumptions about poverty and need. These weren't lazy people looking for handouts, as he had sometimes heard in his corporate circles. They were working families, elderly people on fixed incomes, individuals facing temporary crises that could happen to anyone. Elena moved through the crowd like a social worker, counselor, and friend all rolled into one. She knew which children had birthdays coming up, which parents were looking for work, which seniors needed help filling out government forms. Her genuine care for each person was evident in every interaction. "Marcus," Elena called from across the room. "Can you help Mr. Rodriguez load his groceries in his car? His arthritis is acting up today." Mr. Rodriguez was a dignified man in his 70s who insisted on carrying his own bags despite obvious pain in his joints. As Marcus helped him navigate the parking lot, the older man spoke quietly. "That Elena, she is special, you know. My wife, she passed last year, and I was very sad, very alone. Elena, she remembers my wife's name, asks about my grandchildren. Makes me feel like I still matter." The simple statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. When was the last time he had made someone feel like they mattered? His corporate achievements had earned him respect and admiration. But Elena's gift was deeper, more fundamental. She saw people's essential humanity and reflected it back to them. After they finished for the day, Marcus and Elena walked to a small park across the street, where other volunteers often gathered to decompress. The afternoon sun felt warm on their faces, and Marcus found himself emotionally drained in a way he hadn't experienced since Lily was born. "How do you do this every week?" Marcus asked. "How do you see all that need and not feel overwhelmed?" Elena was quiet for a moment, watching children play on the swing set while their parents chatted on nearby benches. "Sometimes I do feel overwhelmed," she admitted. "But then I remember that feeling overwhelmed is a luxury I can't afford. Those families don't have the option of walking away from their problems, so I don't have the option of walking away from helping them." Her matter-of-fact courage humbled him completely. Marcus had spent years insulating himself from discomfort, surrounding himself with luxury and success that buffered him from the harsh realities others face daily. Elena chose to stand in the middle of that harsh reality and try to make it better. "You asked me the other night what got me interested in social work," Elena continued. "The truth is, I've been where these families are. I know what it feels like to not know where your next meal is coming from, to be embarrassed about wearing the same clothes to school every day, to feel invisible in a world that doesn't seem to have space for you." Marcus wanted to reach for her hand, to offer comfort for past hurts he couldn't change. Instead, he listened as she continued. "When I was 16, my foster family fell on hard times and couldn't afford to keep me. I aged out of the system early and found myself in a studio apartment with nothing but a mattress on the floor and a hot plate. The local food bank kept me alive those first few months while I found work and figured out how to be an adult." The image of teenage Elena, alone and struggling, made Marcus's throat tight with emotion. His own daughter would never face such challenges, protected by wealth and privilege that Elena had never known. "But you survived," Marcus said softly. "More than survived. You're thriving." Elena smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "I'm one of the lucky ones. For every person like me who finds their way out, there are dozens who don't. That's why this matters so much. We can't save everyone, but we can make sure that people don't have to face their struggles completely alone." As they walked back toward the bus stop, Marcus felt something fundamental shifting inside him. The corporate world that had defined him for so long suddenly seemed hollow compared to the authentic human connection he had witnessed today. Elena's work wasn't just about feeding people or providing social services. It was about preserving dignity, offering hope, and refusing to let anyone become invisible. For the first time in years, Marcus understood what it meant to be truly successful. 2 weeks into their blossoming relationship, Elena invited Marcus to her apartment for dinner on a Tuesday evening when she didn't have classes or volunteer commitments. She had apologized in advance for the simplicity of the meal, explaining that her grocery budget was particularly tight this month after her textbook expenses. Marcus arrived with a bottle of wine from his personal collection, something he had chosen carefully to be nice enough to show he cared, but not so expensive as to raise questions about his income. Elena answered the door wearing a sundress that looked like it came from a thrift store, but somehow made her more beautiful than any designer gown he had ever seen. "Perfect timing," she said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss his cheek. I just finished cooking, and I'm actually pretty proud of how it turned out. The apartment smelled incredible, filled with the aroma of herbs and spices that made Marcus's mouth water. Elena had transformed her tiny kitchen table into something special with a tablecloth he suspected was a bedsheet and wildflowers she had probably picked from the vacant lot down the street. Two mismatched candles provided soft lighting that made the small space feel intimate and romantic. "I hope you like pasta," Elena said, carrying a steaming pot to the table. "It's nothing fancy, just spaghetti with a sauce I learned to make in my third foster home." Mrs. Calabrese was Italian, and she said the secret was letting the tomatoes cook slowly until they almost fell apart. Marcus took his first bite and closed his eyes in appreciation. "This is incredible, Elena. Seriously, this is better than most restaurants I've been to." Elena beamed with pride and pleasure. "Really? I was worried it might be too simple. I know you probably eat at much nicer places than this." Marcus felt a pang of guilt at the assumption underlying her comment. Elena believed he was just like her, scraping by on modest means, and she was going out of her way to provide the best meal she could afford. The generosity of spirit behind the gesture overwhelmed him. "This is perfect," he said, meaning it completely. "Some of my favorite meals have been the simplest ones." They talked about everything and nothing as they ate. Elena shared stories from her developmental psychology class, describing theories about childhood resilience that made Marcus think about his own daughter's privileged upbringing. She spoke passionately about a research paper she was writing on trauma-informed care for children in foster systems. "Your professor must be impressed with your insights," Marcus said. "You have real-world experience that most students lack." Elena shrugged modestly. "Sometimes I worry that I'm too emotionally invested in the subject matter. It's hard to be objective when you've lived through what you're studying." "That emotional investment is exactly what will make you an exceptional social worker," Marcus assured her. "The field needs people who understand from the inside what these children are experiencing." After dinner, they moved to Elena's small couch, and she curled up against his side with a naturalness that made Marcus's heart race. Through her window, they could see into the apartment across the courtyard where a family was gathered around their television, the blue light flickering across their faces. "I love watching other people's evening routines," Elena confessed. "That family over there, they have pizza every Tuesday night and watch old movies together. The parents never look at their phones during movie time. It's like a sacred ritual." Marcus followed her gaze, seeing the simple domestic scene through her eyes. The family looked content in a way that had nothing to do with material possessions and everything to do with presence and connection. His own evenings with Lily often involved expensive activities and educational programs. But how often did they simply sit together and enjoy each other's company? "What does your ideal evening look like?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious about Elena's dreams. Elena was quiet for a moment, her head resting on his shoulder. "Someday, I'd love to have a little house with a kitchen big enough for a proper dining table. Nothing fancy, just space for friends to gather and feel welcome. Maybe a small garden where I could grow herbs and vegetables. And children, eventually, whether they're my biological kids or foster children who need a safe place to land." The simplicity of her vision struck Marcus as profoundly beautiful. Elena didn't dream of wealth or luxury. She dreamed of creating the kind of stable, loving home she had never experienced as a child. Her goals were about giving rather than getting, about providing for others the security and belonging she had been denied. "What about you?" Elena asked. "What's your ideal life look like?" Marcus had to think carefully about his answer. His real ideal life involved Elena, but he couldn't say that without revealing feelings he wasn't sure she was ready to hear. And his current life, with its corporate demands and material excess, suddenly seemed hollow when compared to her vision of meaningful simplicity. "Honestly," he said slowly, "I think I'm still figuring that out. I used to think I knew exactly what I wanted, but lately I'm questioning whether those goals were really mine or just what I thought I was supposed to want." Elena turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. Sometimes we get so focused on climbing the ladder that we forget to ask if it's leaning against the right wall. Her insight was startling in its accuracy. Marcus had spent years climbing toward financial success and corporate recognition, but being with Elena made him realize he had never stopped to consider whether those achievements actually made him happy. "You have a gift for seeing things clearly," Marcus told her. "Most people get caught up in their own problems and never develop that kind of perspective." Elena smiled softly. "Foster care teaches you to be observant. You learn to read situations quickly, to understand what people need from you to feel comfortable. It's a survival skill that turned out to be useful in other areas of life." As the evening wore on, they talked about books they had read, places they wanted to travel, and dreams they had for making the world better. Marcus found himself sharing thoughts and feelings he had never voiced to anyone, drawn out by Elena's genuine interest and non-judgmental listening. When it came time for him to leave, Elena walked him to the door with obvious reluctance. Their goodbyes had been getting longer each time, neither wanting to break the connection they felt when they were together. "Marcus," Elena said softly, taking his hands in hers, "I need you to know how much these past few weeks have meant to me. I've never felt so understood by someone, so accepted for exactly who I am." The vulnerability in her admission made Marcus want to pull her close and never let go. Instead, he brought her hands to his lips and kissed her palms gently. "You're extraordinary, Elena," he said. "More extraordinary than you know." As he walked down the 3 flights of stairs to the street, Marcus felt the weight of his deception more heavily than ever. Elena was falling for someone she believed was her equal, someone who understood financial struggle, because he lived it too. How could he tell her the truth without destroying the foundation of trust they had built? Marcus found himself spending more and more time in Elena's neighborhood, discovering excuses to be there that had nothing to do with their planned dates. He told himself he was just exploring a different part of the city, but the truth was that being around Elena's world made him feel more alive than he had in years. On Thursday afternoon, he was walking past the empty building Elena dreamed of turning into a community center when he noticed Roberto sitting on the front steps, his backpack beside him and his head in his hands. The boy looked dejected in a way that immediately set off Marcus's protective instincts. "Hey, Roberto," Marcus called out, crossing the street. "What's going on? Shouldn't you be at home doing homework about Mars colonies?" Roberto looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "The library's computers are all broken, and I can't finish my report about Europa. It's due tomorrow, and Mrs. Thompson said if I don't turn it in, I might not pass to 4th grade. Marcus felt a familiar surge of problem-solving energy, the same drive that had built his company from the ground up. "How much research do you still need to do?" "A lot," Roberto said miserably. "I found some books, but they don't have pictures of Europa's surface, and I need to write about what the ice formations look like. Elena always says I should use multiple sources, but I can't get to any websites." Marcus pulled out his smartphone, an expensive model that could access any information Roberto needed. "Want me to help you look some stuff up? I've got internet on my phone." Roberto's eyes widened with hope and suspicion. "Your phone has the internet? Like the real internet with NASA websites and everything?" "The real internet with NASA websites and everything," Marcus confirmed, sitting down on the steps beside the boy. For the next hour, they researched Europa together, Marcus's phone displaying high-resolution images from the Hubble telescope and detailed articles from space agencies around the world. Roberto took careful notes in handwriting that was surprisingly neat for a 7-year-old, occasionally asking Marcus to spell complicated scientific terms. "This is so much better than the library computers," Roberto said, studying a photograph of Europa's icy surface. "Look at those cracks in the ice. They look like rivers, but made of frozen water instead of liquid water." "That's exactly right," Marcus said, impressed by the boy's observational skills. "Those cracks might be places where the ocean underneath pushes up through the ice." Roberto wrote this down with the intense concentration of a graduate student. "Elena says the most important thing about research is asking good questions. Like, why do the cracks form in those patterns instead of just random breaks?" "Elena's right," Marcus agreed. "What do you think might cause those specific patterns?" Roberto studied the image more carefully, his forehead wrinkled with thought. "Maybe the moon is spinning, and the ocean moves around inside, kind of like water in a bucket when you swing it around. Marcus was amazed by the sophistication of Roberto's reasoning. That's actually very close to what scientists think is happening. You've got the instincts of a real researcher. When they finished gathering information for Roberto's report, the boy looked at Marcus with newfound respect. You know a lot about space stuff. Are you a scientist? I work with computers, Marcus said, which was technically true. But I've always been interested in space exploration. There's something exciting about discovering new worlds and possibilities. Roberto nodded seriously. Elena says that's why education is so important. The more you learn, the more you can explore, even if you can't travel to other planets yourself. The mention of Elena reminded Marcus that she would probably be getting off work soon. As if summoned by his thoughts, he saw her familiar figure walking down the street, her work apron folded over her arm and her face brightening when she spotted them. "Roberto, there you are," she called out. "Your grandmother was worried when you didn't come straight home from school." "I was doing research for my Europa report," Roberto explained excitedly. "Marcus helped me find pictures from NASA and everything. Look at all the notes I took." Elena sat down on the steps beside them, and Marcus was struck by how natural it felt. The three of them gathered like an impromptu family. She examined Roberto's notes with the same serious attention she would give a doctoral dissertation. "This is incredible work, Roberto," she said proudly. "Your teacher is going to be so impressed with the depth of your research." "Marcus helped me understand about tidal forces," Roberto added. "That's why Europa's ice moves around in those patterns." Elena looked at Marcus with surprise and gratitude. "That's pretty advanced stuff for a 7-year-old. "Roberto's a natural scientist," Marcus said. "He just needs access to the right resources." After Roberto ran home to show his grandmother his research notes, Elena and Marcus walked slowly through the neighborhood. The late afternoon light cast long shadows between the buildings, and the sounds of families preparing dinner drifted from open windows. "That was really kind of you," Elena said, slipping her hand into his. "Roberto's been so worried about that report. He takes his schoolwork more seriously than most adults I know. He's going to go far," Marcus said with certainty. "Kids like Roberto just need someone to believe in them and give them opportunities to learn." Elena squeezed his hand. "You sound like you speak from experience. Did someone do that for you when you were young?" Marcus thought about his privileged childhood with private tutors and unlimited access to educational resources. How could he explain that advantage to Elena without revealing the vast difference in their backgrounds? "My parents always encouraged learning," he said carefully. "I was lucky to have people who supported my curiosity." They paused in front of the empty building again, and Elena pressed her face to the window, as she always did, peering inside with longing. "Kids like Roberto deserve to have a place where they can access computers and research materials anytime they need them," she said wistfully. "Somewhere they can explore their interests without worrying about broken equipment or limited hours." Marcus studied the building with fresh eyes, imagining it filled with children like Roberto, all hungry for knowledge and opportunity. In his mind, he could see computer stations along the windows, comfortable reading areas, and spaces for tutoring and mentoring. The renovation would be straightforward, and the ongoing operating costs would be minimal compared to his monthly personal expenses. "Elena," he said impulsively, "what if I told you I might know someone who could help make your community center dream happen?" Elena turned to him with cautious hope in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean someone with connections, maybe access to funding or resources. Would you be interested in exploring possibilities?" Elena's expression shifted from hope to skepticism. "Marcus, that's sweet of you to want to help, but these kinds of projects need serious money. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, maybe more. I can't ask you to get involved in something that big." "But what if someone wanted to get involved?" Marcus pressed gently. "What if there was a way to make it happen?" Elena was quiet for a long moment, studying his face as if trying to read something there. "I'd have to know it was legitimate, that it wasn't some kind of charity case situation where I'd end up feeling beholden to someone." Her pride was evident, and Marcus realized he needed to be careful about how he approached this. Elena would never accept help that felt like pity or condescension. "Of course," he said. It would have to be a real partnership, with you maintaining control over the vision and implementation. As they continued walking, Marcus's mind raced with possibilities, already strategizing how he could make Elena's dream a reality without revealing his true identity. Marcus sat in his Tesla outside Elena's apartment building, gripping the steering wheel as he wrestled with a decision that had been keeping him awake for 3 nights. In his briefcase lay documents that could change Elena's life: a lease agreement for the empty building, renovation contracts, and funding commitments that would turn her community center dream into reality. All he needed was the courage to tell her the truth about who he really was. His phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Just got home from class. Still coming over for dinner." Marcus typed back quickly, "On my way up." But instead of moving, he remained frozen in his car, watching Elena's window glow with warm light 3 floors above. Through the glass, he could see her silhouette moving around her tiny kitchen, probably preparing another simple meal that would somehow be perfect because she had made it with love. The weight of his deception felt crushing tonight. Every day he spent with Elena, every story she shared about her struggles, every moment she apologized for not being able to afford something nicer, added another layer to the lie he was living. She trusted him completely, believed they were equals navigating the same financial challenges, and that trust made his betrayal feel even worse. But what choice did he have? If he revealed his wealth now, would Elena believe his feelings for her were genuine? Or would she assume he had been slumming, playing at poverty like some kind of social experiment? The thought of seeing disappointment and hurt in her eyes terrified him more than any business deal gone wrong. Marcus finally forced himself out of the car and climbed the 3 flights of stairs to Elena's apartment. She opened the door before he could knock, her face lighting up with a smile that never failed to make his chest tight with emotion. "You look stressed," she said immediately, studying his face with concern. "Bad day at work." "Something like that," Marcus replied, allowing her to pull him inside. The apartment smelled like garlic and herbs, and he could see she had set her small table with the mismatched dishes that somehow felt more elegant than his expensive china. "I made your favorite pasta," Elena said, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Well, the pasta you said was your favorite. I'm still learning all your preferences." The casual intimacy of her words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Elena was thinking long-term, imagining a future where she would know all his favorite foods, his preferred books, his dreams and fears. Meanwhile, he was living a lie that grew more complex every day. During dinner, Elena chattered excitedly about her developmental psychology class, where they were studying attachment theory and its implications for child welfare policy. Her passion for the subject was infectious, and Marcus found himself genuinely engaged despite his internal turmoil. "Professor Martinez thinks I should consider graduate school eventually," Elena said, twirling pasta around her fork. "She says I have insights that could contribute to research in the field." Can you imagine? Me, doing actual research that might help change policies for foster children. "You'd be incredible at that," Marcus said sincerely. "You understand the system from the inside, and you have the heart to want to make it better." Elena's cheeks flushed with pleasure. "It feels like such an impossible dream sometimes. Graduate school costs money I don't have, and I'd probably have to quit working full-time, which means I couldn't afford rent. It's one of those catch-22 situations where you need money to make money." Marcus's hands clenched involuntarily around his fork. He could solve this problem with a phone call, could fund Elena's entire education without even noticing the expense. The frustration of having solutions he couldn't offer was becoming unbearable. "Maybe there are scholarships, grants for people with your background," Marcus suggested carefully. Elena sighed. "I looked into it. There's some funding available, but the competition is fierce, and most programs expect you to have research experience I don't have. It's not impossible, just really difficult." After dinner, they settled on Elena's couch with cups of coffee that Elena had apologized for, explaining it was the cheap instant kind because her coffee maker had broken and she couldn't afford to replace it yet. Marcus made a mental note to anonymously send her a new machine, then caught himself planning another deception. Elena curled against his side, her head on his shoulder, and they fell into comfortable conversation about everything and nothing. She told him about Roberto's latest space discoveries, about the elderly woman at the food bank who had started volunteering after being a client for months, about small victories and daily challenges that made up the texture of life in her world. "Marcus," Elena said softly, turning to look at him, "can I tell you something?" "Of course," he replied, though something in her tone made him nervous. "I've been thinking about us, about where this relationship might be heading," Elena continued. "I need you to know that I've never felt this way about anyone before. You see me in a way that makes me feel valued and understood." Marcus's throat constricted with emotion and guilt. "Elena," he started, but she held up a gentle hand. "Let me finish," she said with a small smile. "I know we haven't been together very long, but I can imagine a future with you. Not just romance, but partnership. Building something together, supporting each other's dreams, maybe even raising children who would have the stability and love we both missed in different ways." The vision Elena painted was everything Marcus wanted, but it was built on a foundation of lies that would eventually crumble. How could he tell her that he had already fallen completely in love with her? That he wanted nothing more than to build that future she described? That he was terrified of losing her when the truth inevitably came out? "Elena," Marcus said carefully, "what if you found out that someone you cared about had been keeping something important from you? Something that didn't change how they felt, but might change how you felt about them?" Elena considered this seriously. "I guess it would depend on what they were hiding and why. If it was something that affected our relationship, or if they were trying to deceive me about who they really were, that would be hard to forgive. But if they were protecting something private, or if they were scared of being judged, I think I could understand that." Marcus felt a spark of hope mixed with terror. What if the secret was something good, but they were afraid it would change how you saw them? Elena smiled and reached for his hand. "Marcus, are you trying to tell me something? Because whatever it is, I'd rather hear it from you than worry about what you might be hiding." The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility and risk. Marcus looked into Elena's trusting eyes and felt the words forming on his lips, the confession that could either strengthen their bond or destroy it completely. But before he could speak, Elena's phone rang shrilly from the kitchen counter. "Sorry," she said, jumping up to answer it. "It might be about Roberto. His grandmother worries when he stays out late." As Elena spoke in rapid Spanish to someone who sounded upset, Marcus sat alone on the couch, the moment of revelation broken. Maybe it was better this way, he told himself. Maybe he needed more time to figure out the right way to tell her the truth without losing everything that mattered most to him. Elena's face went pale as she listened to the frantic voice on the other end of the phone. She switched between English and Spanish, her tone growing increasingly worried with each passing moment. Marcus watched helplessly from the couch, understanding enough Spanish to know someone was in distress, but not enough to follow the details. Sí, y understand. I'll be right there, Elena said before hanging up and immediately reaching for her jacket. "Marcus, I'm so sorry, but I have to go." That was Mrs. Rodriguez from downstairs. Roberto's grandmother collapsed, and they took her to the hospital. Roberto is alone and scared, and Mrs. Rodriguez can't leave her own sick husband. "Of course, go," Marcus said immediately, standing up. "Do you need me to drive you?" Elena paused in her rush toward the door. "You don't have a car, remember? I'll take the bus to the hospital." Marcus caught himself before he could offer his Tesla. "Right, of course. I'll call you a rideshare." Elena shook her head quickly. "I can't afford a rideshare to the hospital and back. The bus will be fine, it just takes longer." The casual mention of her financial constraints hit Marcus like a slap. While he debated whether to reveal his wealth, Elena was calculating bus fare to rush to a frightened child's side. The absurdity of his position crashed over him with fresh shame. "At least let me come with you," Marcus offered. "Roberto knows me, and you might need help with him." Elena's expression softened with gratitude. "That would be wonderful, actually. He's probably terrified, and having familiar faces around might help." They caught the number 7 bus outside Elena's building, and during the 40-minute ride to Seattle General Hospital, Elena filled Marcus in on Roberto's situation. His grandmother was his legal guardian after his parents died in a car accident when he was 4. She worked as a night cleaner at office buildings to support them both, often leaving Roberto alone in the evenings to do homework and put himself to bed. She's been having chest pains for weeks, but couldn't afford to see a doctor, Elena explained, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Roberto told me she kept saying it was just stress, but I could see how tired she looked lately. I should have insisted she get checked out. This isn't your fault, Marcus said firmly. You can't take care of everyone in the neighborhood, even though you try to. Elena managed a weak smile. Sometimes I feel like I have to try. These people don't have safety nets like health insurance or savings accounts. When something goes wrong, they fall through the cracks unless someone catches them. At the hospital, they found Roberto in the pediatric waiting area, curled up in a chair that dwarfed his small frame. His eyes were red from crying, and he clutched a worn, stuffed dinosaur that Elena had never seen him with before. When he spotted them, his face crumpled with relief. Elena, is Abuela going to be okay? The doctors won't tell me anything because I'm just a kid. Elena knelt beside his chair and pulled him into a fierce hug. The doctors are taking very good care of her, she assured him. Sometimes it takes time to figure out the best way to help someone feel better. Roberto turned to Marcus with desperate hope. You know about science stuff? Can you find out what's wrong with my grandmother? Marcus felt the weight of the child's trust like a physical burden. I'll see what I can learn, he promised, though he wasn't sure how to deliver on that commitment without revealing connections that would raise questions. While Elena stayed with Roberto, Marcus approached the information desk and learned that visiting hours were restricted and that only family members could receive updates about patients. The bureaucratic barriers frustrated him enormously. At his private hospital, where he served on the board of directors, one phone call would have provided complete information and ensured the best possible care. Instead, he returned to Elena and Roberto empty-handed. They settled in for what looked like a long night, Elena holding Roberto while he dozed fitfully against her shoulder. Marcus watched them together and saw a preview of the kind of mother Elena would be: patient, protective, completely devoted to a child's well-being. Around midnight, a tired-looking doctor finally approached them. Roberto's grandmother had suffered a mild heart attack brought on by exhaustion and untreated high blood pressure. She would recover, but she needed surgery to insert a stent and would be hospitalized for several days. What happens to Roberto during that time? Elena asked immediately. The doctor looked uncomfortable. We've contacted child services. They'll place him in emergency foster care until his grandmother is released. No, Roberto said firmly, fully awake now. I don't want to go to strangers. Can't I stay with Elena? Elena's face showed how much she wanted to say yes, but Marcus could see her calculating practical impossibilities. Her apartment was barely big enough for one person. She worked long hours, and she had no legal standing to take custody of Roberto, even temporarily. Let me make some calls, Elena said gently to Roberto. Maybe we can figure something out. But Marcus knew the system well enough to understand that emergency foster placement was probably inevitable. Roberto would spend the next week with strangers, scared and confused, while his grandmother recovered alone in the hospital. The injustice of it made his chest burn with anger. Elena spent the next hour on the phone with social workers, pleading Roberto's case and offering to provide temporary care. Each conversation ended the same way: bureaucratic policies that prioritize paperwork over a child's emotional needs. Finally, a social worker arrived to collect Roberto. The boy clung to Elena, sobbing, while she whispered promises that she would visit every day and that his grandmother would be better soon. I don't want to go, Roberto cried. Why can't I just stay in a hospital waiting room until Abuela gets better? The social worker, a kind but overworked woman, gently explained that children couldn't stay in hospitals overnight. As they prepared to leave, Roberto turned to Marcus with desperate eyes. You have connections, right? Elena said you might know people who could help with the community center. Can't your connections help me stay with Elena instead of strangers? The plea hit Marcus like a physical blow. This child was begging him to use influence he actually possessed resources that could solve this problem immediately. One phone call to his attorney could arrange temporary guardianship. A donation to the hospital could ensure the grandmother received the best possible care. His connections could navigate the bureaucracy that was separating a scared child from the only person who truly cared about his well-being. But using that influence would mean revealing everything to Elena, and Marcus wasn't ready for that conversation. Not here, not now, with Roberto's crisis demanding their full attention. Instead, Marcus knelt beside Roberto and looked him in the eyes. Sometimes the system moves slowly, but Elena and I will make sure you're okay. We'll visit you every day, and we'll be here when your grandmother gets better. It was a promise that felt hollow even as he spoke it, and Marcus hated himself for choosing his own comfort over a child's desperate need. Marcus couldn't sleep that night. After leaving Elena at her apartment with promises to check on Roberto the next day, he drove his Tesla through the empty streets of Seattle, his mind racing with the weight of what he had witnessed. By dawn, he had made a decision that terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. He spent the morning making phone calls from his penthouse office. His attorney arranged emergency temporary guardianship papers that would allow Elena to care for Roberto legally. His personal physician contacted the hospital to ensure Roberto's grandmother received the best cardiac care available. His accountant set up an anonymous donation fund that would cover all medical expenses and provide financial support during her recovery. But the most important call was to the property management company that owned the empty building Elena dreamed about. By noon, Marcus had signed a lease under his company's name and authorized immediate renovations to transform it into a fully equipped community center. The construction crews would begin work that afternoon. Now came the hard part, telling Elena the truth about everything. Marcus arrived at the foster care facility where Roberto was staying, his hands trembling slightly as he parked outside the nondescript building. Elena was already there, sitting in the visiting room with Roberto on her lap while he showed her a drawing he had made of his grandmother surrounded by hearts. Elena's face lit up when she saw Marcus, but he could see the exhaustion and worry etched around her eyes. She had probably been awake all night, too, thinking about Roberto sleeping in a strange place with people he didn't know. "How is he doing?" Marcus asked, sitting down beside them. "Okay, considering," Elena replied softly. "The foster family seems nice enough, but Roberto barely slept. He keeps asking when he can go home." Marcus took a deep breath. "Elena, can we talk privately for a minute?" Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. She arranged for Roberto to continue drawing while they stepped into the hallway. "Elena," Marcus began, his heart pounding, "I need to tell you something important. Something I should have told you weeks ago." Elena's expression grew cautious. "What is it?" Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a news article from the Seattle Business Journal featuring his photograph under the headline, "Tech CEO Marcus Chun named Entrepreneur of the Year." Elena stared at the screen, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and finally shock. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "This says you're the CEO of TechFlow Solutions. That's a billion-dollar company." Marcus nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "I am. I have been for 8 years." Elena took a step back from him, her hand going to her throat. "You're a billionaire, and you've been pretending to be someone like me? Someone who works in tech support and worries about rent money?" "I never meant for it to go this far," Marcus said desperately. "I was so tired of people who only saw my money instead of who I really am. When I met you, you treated me like a person, not a bank account. I was afraid that if you knew the truth, everything would change." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Everything has changed, Marcus. Everything we built together was based on a lie." "No," Marcus said urgently. "My feelings for you are real. The person you fell in love with, that's who I really am underneath all the money and corporate titles. The connection we have, that's genuine." Elena shook her head, backing further away from him. "The person I fell in love with doesn't exist. He was a character you created to amuse yourself. How could you let me apologize for cheap wine and simple meals when you probably spend more on lunch than I make in a week?" The hurt in her voice cut Marcus deeper than any business failure ever had. Elena, please let me explain. I brought legal papers that will let you take custody of Roberto today. His grandmother's medical bills are covered. I've leased the building you wanted and started renovations for your community center. Elena's expression shifted from hurt to something that looked like disgust. You think you can buy your way out of this? You think throwing money at the problems you helped create will fix what you've broken? That's not what I'm doing, Marcus protested. I'm trying to help the people you care about. Roberto needs you, not some random foster family. Your community center can happen now. All the dreams you shared with me can become reality. Elena wiped tears from her cheeks with angry swipes. Those dreams were about building something through hard work and dedication, not having some rich man swoop in and make it happen because he feels guilty about lying to his charity case girlfriend. You're not a charity case, Marcus said desperately. You're the most incredible person I've ever met. You're strong and compassionate and brilliant, and I love you. Elena laughed bitterly. You love the idea of me. You love how good it made you feel to play pretend in my world. But you don't love me enough to have been honest with me from the beginning. The social worker appeared in the hallway, looking between them with professional concern. Is everything all right here? Elena composed herself quickly. Yes, thank you. I was just leaving. She started walking toward the exit, then turned back to Marcus one final time. I'll take custody of Roberto because he needs stability and I love him like family. But I don't want your money for the community center, and I don't want to see you again. Find someone in your own social circle to play with. Elena, please, Marcus called after her, but she was already pushing through the doors into the bright afternoon sunlight. Marcus stood alone in the sterile hallway, surrounded by the sound of children playing in distant rooms and the institutional smell of disinfectant and floor wax. He had everything he thought he wanted. Enough money to solve any problem, the power to make dreams come true with a phone call, and the success that was supposed to guarantee happiness. But he had lost the one thing that actually mattered, the woman who had seen his true self and loved him for it, before she learned that his true self included a fundamental capacity for deception. The irony wasn't lost on him that in trying to preserve their relationship by hiding his wealth, he had destroyed it completely. Outside, Marcus sat in his Tesla and watched Elena emerge from the building with Roberto's hand in hers. The boy looked up at her with complete trust and adoration, the same way Marcus wished Elena would look at him again. But when Roberto spotted Marcus through the car window and waved enthusiastically, Elena quickly guided him in the opposite direction without acknowledging Marcus at all. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus Chun had encountered a problem that money couldn't solve. 3 weeks passed in a blur of regret and sleepless nights. Marcus threw himself into work with the desperate energy of someone trying to outrun his own thoughts. But every board meeting and conference call felt hollow compared to the authentic connection he had lost. His assistant noticed his distraction. His housekeeper commented on untouched meals, and even 80-year-old Lily asked why he seemed so sad all the time. The community center renovations continued despite Elena's rejection of his funding. Marcus had structured the project through an anonymous foundation, making it impossible for her to refuse without hurting the children who would benefit. He drove by the building every few days, watching workers install new windows and paint bright murals on the exterior walls. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, Marcus sat in his Tesla across from the nearly completed center when he saw a familiar small figure approaching the front door. Roberto walked hand in hand with Elena, both of them carrying boxes that looked heavy for their size. Marcus watched as Elena struggled with the door while balancing her load, and every instinct told him to get out and help, but he knew his presence would only make things worse. Instead, he drove to Lily's school to pick her up early, hoping that time with his daughter would ease the constant ache in his chest. But when Lily climbed into the car, she immediately noticed his mood. "Dad, you've been really sad lately," she said with the directness that 80-year-olds possessed. "Is it because of the lady you were dating?" Marcus had mentioned Elena to Lily only in passing, but his daughter was perceptive beyond her years. "How did you know about that?" "You smiled different when you talked about her," Lily explained. "Like you were happy in a way you hadn't been happy before. But now you look like you lost something really important." The simple observation from his daughter hit Marcus with surprising force. "I made some mistakes, sweetheart. Sometimes adults mess things up even when they're trying to do the right thing." Lily considered this seriously. "Did you tell her you were sorry?" "I tried to, but she didn't want to listen," Marcus admitted. "Maybe you didn't try hard enough," Lily suggested. "When I mess up with my friends, sometimes sorry isn't enough. Sometimes you have to show them you understand why they're hurt and prove that you won't do it again." That evening, Marcus found himself walking through Elena's neighborhood, not with any plan to see her, but simply because being in the place where they had been happy together felt like the only way to process his grief. He passed the small park where they had shared their first real conversation, the food bank where he had learned what genuine service looked like, and finally the community center where Elena's dream was becoming reality. To his surprise, lights were on inside the building despite the late hour. Through the large front windows, he could see Elena arranging furniture with the help of several volunteers. Roberto was there too, carefully organizing books on newly installed shelves. The scene was exactly what Elena had envisioned months ago, a space where children could learn and grow and feel valued. Marcus was about to leave when Roberto spotted him through the window. The boy ran to the door and pressed his face against the glass, waving enthusiastically. Elena looked up to see what had captured Roberto's attention, and her expression hardened when she saw Marcus on the sidewalk. For a moment, they stared at each other through the glass, separated by more than just a door. Then Elena said something to Roberto that made him look disappointed, but he stepped away from the window. Elena approached the door and opened it just wide enough to speak. "What do you want, Marcus?" she asked quietly. "I wanted to see how the center was coming along," Marcus replied. "It looks incredible." Elena's expression remained guarded. "It's not your center. The anonymous donation got traced back to you, but I've found other funding sources. I'll be paying back every penny you contributed." The pride in her voice was both admirable and heartbreaking. "Elena, you don't have to do that. This place will help so many children." "I have to do it," Elena said firmly. "I can't build something meaningful on a foundation of lies and guilt money." Marcus nodded, accepting her decision even though it frustrated him. "I understand. Can I ask how Roberto is doing?" Elena's expression softened slightly. "He's thriving. The school counselor says he's one of the brightest kids she's ever worked with. He starts an advanced science program next month." The pride in her voice when she spoke about Roberto reminded Marcus of what he had lost. Elena's capacity to nurture and believe in others was extraordinary, and he had thrown away his chance to be part of that loving circle. "Elena," Marcus said quietly, "I know you don't want to hear this, but I need you to know that everything I felt for you is real. The person I was when we were together, that wasn't act. That was me discovering who I could be when I wasn't defined by money and corporate success." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "The person you were with me was built on deception. Marcus, every moment we shared, you were hiding something fundamental about yourself. How can I trust that anything else was real? Because you changed me," Marcus said desperately. "Before I met you, I thought success meant having enough money to solve any problem. But watching you work with Roberto, volunteering at the food bank, dreaming about helping children who had been forgotten by the system, you showed me what real success looks like. You showed me what it means to matter to other people, not because of what you can buy them, but because of who you are when you show up for them." Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "If that's true, then prove it. Stop trying to fix things with money and start figuring out how to be the person you claim I helped you discover." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "I mean, find a way to use your resources and influence that doesn't involve trying to rescue me or buy your way back into my life," Elena said. "There are thousands of children like Roberto who need advocates. There are communities like this one that need support. If you really learned something from our time together, show the world instead of telling me." With that, Elena stepped back inside the community center and closed the door gently but firmly. Marcus stood on the sidewalk in the rain, watching through the windows as she returned to her work, surrounded by volunteers who believed in her vision and children who trusted her completely. For the first time since their relationship ended, Marcus felt something other than despair. Elena had given him a challenge, a way to prove that their time together had changed him in meaningful ways. He couldn't win her back, but he could honor what she had taught him about genuine service and authentic connection. Walking back to his car, Marcus pulled out his phone and began making the first of many calls that would transform his approach to wealth and influence. If Elena had shown him what real success looked like, then it was time to build a life worthy of the person she had believed he could become. 3 months later, the Seattle Times ran a feature story about Marcus Chin's new foundation, which provided funding and mentorship for community-led social programs across the Pacific Northwest. The article mentioned his partnership with local organizations, his hands-on approach to philanthropy, and his commitment to supporting grassroots leaders rather than imposing top-down solutions. Elena read the article while having coffee at the cafe where they had first met. She thought about the man she had loved, the one who had hidden his wealth but revealed his heart, and wondered if maybe, someday, they might find a way back to each other that was built on truth instead of deception. But for now, she had work to do and children to help, and that was enough. If this story touched your heart, please drop a comment and let us know your favorite part, or if you've ever discovered someone's hidden talents when given the chance. What moments of genuine connection have changed your perspective on what really matters in life?